Welcome to Simply Busy Home. My name is Megan, and today I am so excited to share with you the birth story of our fifth baby. So what I think I'm going to do is first share the things that I believe helped me to go into labor. This is a really special labor and birth for me because it's the first one that I didn't have to be induced for. And like I said earlier, this is my fifth baby, so I've had to be induced with all of the other children that I've had. And so I had just been praying and asking the Lord to please let me go into labor naturally and just experience, labor without having to be induced. So I was just so thankful when I realized, this is happening. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to share with you the things that I think helped me go into labor, and then I'll share the actual birth story, and then I will introduce you to him. So I've written this down, so you might see me look down a little bit. So the first thing is I had several weeks, probably 4 weeks of irregular contractions. That's also a first for me. Not every day, but very frequently each week. And it was exciting. It was so exciting because I was like, oh my gosh, I know it's doing something. I know it's causing me to be dilated, or it's causing things to soften up. And I was very confident that they were useful contractions. So that was the first thing. The irregular contractions for about 4 weeks. And then the second thing would be keeping busy around the house. I did a couple videos of where I was just, waiting for the baby and cleaning, cooking, doing all the regular things that I normally do. And so that was my main goal this time, was to stay busy, to not sit around too much, doing the laundry, picking things up off the floor, running errands, just keeping myself busy around the house, keeping a constant flow of movement and not sitting still too much. I had the privilege of hearing the story of my great-grandmother going into labor with my grandmother. After I had Bella, my oldest daughter, I was visiting her and I was nursing her, and I remember her saying, how beautiful it was to see me nursing my baby. I can imagine, being a great-grandmother and seeing my great-granddaughter nursing her baby like that. Man, that would be such a joy if I get to experience that. I think she was probably just feeling blessed to be able to witness that. And she shared with me the day that she went into labor with my grandmother. And that is just such a sweet memory, because how often do you get to hear the story of your grandmother being born by her mom? So she basically told me that she was doing normal housework that day. She was scrubbing the floor, she was doing yard work, and those normal everyday tasks of movement and squatting, carrying things, and just doing chores, staying busy, is what she was doing when she went into labor. And so I had that thought in mind. That is one of the things that I think really helped me to go into labor on my own. Also, I went on regular walks the last, probably not the whole pregnancy, because I was pregnant throughout the summer and it was just too hot during the day to be going for walks, for me anyway. But this last week and a half or so, the weather had really cooled down here, and I just went on not even long walks, not even hour-long walks, just maybe 15 to 30-minute long walks. And I think that those helped. Those last, few days, I think that they really contributed to helping me go into labor. And then the last thing is what I did the day that I went into labor. And that will bring me into the actual birth story. So I went into labor in the evening. That day, I went grocery shopping. Okay, I went to Aldi. If you ever been to Aldi, you have to bag your own groceries. So I went grocery shopping, bagged up all of the food that we got with help from my girls. I think just that action of bagging up your own groceries and just, having to carry pretty heavy bags into the house, I think all that stuff kind of helped. Walking around in the grocery store. I had to go to a couple different stores. I went to our local grocery store as well. I had to get a couple things from there. And so I think just that movement, that day, I was like, I am going to run these errands and get this stuff done, stock up my fridge so that the kids have food whenever I go into labor, whenever this happens, just kind of was like that push that did it. That evening, Bella and I went on a walk. I remember we were about to go back into the house and I was like, you know what, let's just walk to the end of the cul-de-sac one more time and then we'll be done. And so we did, I did a little extra and, went in and then just enjoyed the rest of our night. So that brings me to my birth story. So around 11 o'clock that evening, I started having contractions. Now, again, like I told you before, I had irregular contractions. So, but I always pay attention when they come. So I was like, okay, all right, something's going on, and started having the contractions. And probably about an hour later, they started getting more intense, just stronger. And so at that point, I felt like, I think I need the heating pad to just help with, the muscle ache. And so that was the first time that I had ever needed the heating pad. Those several weeks of having the irregular contractions is the first time that I actually needed to use the heating pad to help with the aching. So that would be around midnight. And I had them for about another hour and then I fell asleep. So they must have either stopped or calmed down enough to where I could sleep. And I woke back up an hour later at around 2. So I had the contractions from 11 to 1. I fell asleep for about an hour and woke back up around 2 o'clock and they started back up again. Or were, strong enough to where it woke me up and I could feel them. Then by around 2:45, they were getting stronger. And at that point, I woke up Hector and I said, I think I need to call Cecily. And because Cecily was going to come to watch the kids. And Hector was like, are you sure? I don't know. I don't think so. And, or maybe I said, babe, should I call Cecily? I've been having contractions. I think that's what I said. I think I told him that I had been having contractions because he was sleeping this whole time. He had no idea. That's when he was like, I don't know. I don't think so, because this would have been like my 3rd or 4th time calling Cecily and thinking that I was in labor because I was having these contractions. And she would come and then it was a false alarm. So I was really trying to wait until I absolutely had to call her. And at this point, it was like I was using the heating pad, to manage my pain. And then they were getting even stronger. So I was like, oh, it is so hard, on one end, when you're induced, you have this appointment that you have, to go in. You know when you're going to go in. And then, when you're going into labor on your own, when you're letting your body do it naturally, you just kind of have to gauge how you feel and you're timing them. And so anyway, I think I had a contraction while he and I were talking and trying to figure out if I should call her or not. And when he saw me have the contraction, he was like, okay, yeah, maybe you should call her. So I called Cecily. At this point, it's somewhere between 2:45 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And she's like, I will be right there. And she was. She was here before a half an hour. She came right away. And so then it was like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. We just got this burst of energy, and I got up and brushed my teeth. I got dressed. Lights are on here. My oldest daughter, Bella, she woke up and she was like warming up the heating pad for me, because she really, really wanted to witness me giving birth, but she's too young to go to the hospital. So I told her, when I go into labor, I will wake you up, so at least you can experience that part. So she was happy to help with that and just like be present for that time. And so, we already had our hospital bag packed for the past couple weeks. And we were just getting like our toothbrushes, in there, and just last minute stuff that you really can't pack ahead of time. So then Cecily shows up, and I'm just kind of showing her what's in the fridge. And I had a couple contractions, and she sees like, okay, this is different from the other times I came. Because the other times, like, I didn't have to stop what I was doing. The pain level was much different. I had to, stop and kind of just breathe through them, truly breathe through them. And then she's like, you should probably time them. You should probably start timing them. Because at that point, I wasn't really timing them. I just was going off of how I felt. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So there was some that were 6 minutes apart, 8 minutes apart, then 3 minutes apart. And so they were kind of all over the place. I'm just kind of continuing to, after a contraction, then I keep on explaining to her, what's in the pantry, what's in the, what I had already prepared or what she can prepare for the kids. Bella was timing the contractions, and I think I went to go make my bed at one point and had another contraction. And then it was like everybody in the house was awake. Sophie and Anna had woken up. I think Titus was awake too. So we're all wide awake, and this event is going on, and Hector and I are like, when do we go to the hospital? We've never been in this situation before. And so Cecily's like, well, usually they tell you when they're 5 minutes apart for an hour, but not everyone's the same. And so maybe you could try calling them and see what they say. Let them know how you're feeling. And so that's what we did. And they basically said, come whenever you want to. She may have asked me what the timing in between each contraction was, but I don't really remember. I do remember her saying, you can come whenever you feel like you could be in labor, like you're ready. And then I was like, you know what, let me just get in the bed and try to see if maybe I need to labor some more in the bed. And I had some stronger ones. And at that point, it was like, we had probably about a 25-minute ride to the hospital. And I did not want to have strong contractions like that in the car. I don't know why I thought I was going to get around that, but I was like, you know what? Let's just go. Because I remember with my last two labors, once I got to the point where I felt like maybe I do want the epidural. At that point, it was like maybe an hour later, I had the baby. So it was getting to that point to where the contractions were getting stronger, and they were hurt.
Oh. Okay. This little guy, he just wants to be held.
Okay, these things are great. Always have one in my bag. You might hear some little noises because Mama's milk is just so delicious. Where was I? I don't even remember. Let's see. We decided, okay, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go to the hospital now. It was sometime between 4 and 4:30 that we decided to go ahead and leave for the hospital. And it just like, we get outside and the air is cool and crisp, and it's like, wow, like this is happening. I'm going to the hospital in labor. We get in the car and we're driving there. I just remember like asking Hector, please don't drive on the right side of the road, because the road, it's like 2 lanes on the right and 2 lanes on the left, and I'm basically asking him to drive in the middle of the road because it was so bumpy on the right side. And you can just feel like every bump in the road when you're in labor. So we are just driving, and then we hit the intersection where we have to make a left turn, and it's a red light, and I had a big strong contraction. And then we drive through town, and right before we get to the hospital, I had another big contraction. And then we're checking in at the hospital, and they had a wheelchair ready for me, and while they're checking me in, I had another big contraction, and Hector wheels me down to labor and delivery room, which is a first because normally I'm just walking in, you know, for my appointment. You know, they weigh you. The first thing they do is they weigh you. We get into the room, and I want to say it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. I went in like, you know, I think I might want the epidural this time. So after I used the restroom and got into the gown, I get into the hospital bed, and they checked me to see what was going on, if I was dilated or how dilated I was. I was already at a 6. So 6 centimeters dilated already. And she said I could still have the epidural, but I had to have labs taken. They had to do paperwork and all this. So that's basically what they were doing. I had to fill out, or they were filling out the paperwork. They were asking me questions. I'm having these contractions, breathing through them, you know, while they're doing all this. They took my labs. They give you IVs. Then everybody left, and it's just Hector and I in the room, and I'm laboring. They were just waiting at that point for the anesthesiologist to come. I don't really know where he was. They never said. At the end of the day, I did not have an epidural. I had some heating pads that they give you. They're like these temporary heating pads. You break them, you shake them, you break them, you massage them, and then they get warm. You put them on your back, and that was kind of like the pain management that I could have. You can't after you're a 6. Their policy is that you can't have any other kind of medicine other than an epidural. So I couldn't have anything to kind of take the edge off. The heating pads didn't really help. Then at the end, I wanted some counter pressure. The nurses came in. She showed Hector how to do the counter pressure, and that did help. And I kind of let out a wail, and she's like, oh, that scream sounded different than the others. She's like, let me check you to see where we are here. And she checks me, and she's like, okay. The only thing, you're at a 10. The only thing keeping you from having the baby right now is the bag of water. She's like, so we can either break the water or you can still have the epidural. And I'm like, or you can break the water and have a baby right now. And I'm like, let's break this water and have this baby. Everyone comes in and they broke the water. And this was actually the first time that I was given the option to squat or get on all fours and have the baby that way instead of on my back. And so I tried squatting, and that didn't really work because I had to hold myself up on this bar that they kind of attached to the bed. And so I kind of got tired quickly of that. And then they're like, okay, well, let's try on all fours. And that was the way that I was able to deliver the baby. So that was really cool. Looking back, you know, in hindsight, I believe that it was a mercy of the Lord that I didn't have the epidural as much as I wanted it. And the Lord knows what's best for us. And he knows what we need. And although it was quite painful, epidurals are known to slow down labor. They're known to slow labor down and the whole birth process. And also, when you have an epidural, it takes the pain away by numbing you basically from the waist down. Timothy was a very big baby. And I don't think that I would have been able to push him out as quickly as I did, or even maybe at all, I'm not sure, if I would have had the epidural, because I pushed him out in about 15 minutes. It took me about 20 minutes to push out Sophie, and I had the epidural with her. But when you're feeling the pain of childbirth, I think that helps you to be able to get the baby out quicker. That's kind of been my experience, but it did take about 15 minutes to push him out because Timothy was 10 pounds and 6 ounces. He was a big boy. That, I think, was for the best that I didn't have the epidural. So I wanted to hopefully encourage you with the fact that just because something is painful, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's a very good thing to be able to bear a child, to bring forth life. If you are pregnant and you are going to be having a baby soon, and maybe you might be having a little bit of anxiety or fear of the pain of childbirth, read Genesis chapter 3 and know that there's a reason for the pain, but it only lasts so long. And I just remember, like, you know, it's hard in the moment, just like anything else in life that you go through that's hard. It's hard in the moment, but then when you reach the other side in victory, it's like you have such a heart of thanksgiving that you went through that pain and you survived it. So I just remember being in the recovery room and thinking, thank you, Lord, so much. That was really, really hard, but I am so thankful that I have this baby and he's doing well and I'm doing well. And I was just so thankful, like, that part was over and now I get to enjoy this part, because I wouldn't get to enjoy this part without that part. And so anyway, I just wanted to encourage you with that. Just because something's painful doesn't mean it's bad. And so we got to the hospital around 5 o'clock in the morning, and then by 7:07 a.m. this little guy, Timothy Levi, was born. And here he is. This is our little guy. He is so soft and squishy and cuddly, and we have just been enjoying getting to know him and loving on him, and just spending time together. It's been so nice. There's always this little concern that the current baby will, you know, have his feelings hurt having another new baby coming into the family, but Titus has just been loving Timothy. He wants to hold him and kiss him and hold his hand, and he is just like, this is my brother. And so we couldn't have asked for anything more. The girls are, asking all day long if they can hold Timothy. Every moment someone's asking if they can hold him, and we let him hold him, and then it's like, okay, let him lay in the bassinet. It took a whole lot of effort to put this bassinet together. He's going to sleep in it a little bit. I have just been resting. Labor was super painful, but coming home, I have felt the best after this delivery than I have with all the rest. So I really don't know what I can attribute that to, but I'm very thankful for it. And I was feeling so good that I probably wasn't resting quite as much as I should have, just because it was just so easy to move around after this delivery. Then with my other ones, I made some banana pancakes. They're my favorite. So I wanted some banana pancakes. I made them up, and I did wash some dishes. Probably overdid it a little bit because I can tell with, my bleeding and things like that. And so thankfully Hector has been home, and he and the girls, they've taken care of the laundry and straightening up. And so I haven't had to do all those things, even though you want to just jump in and help. But it's like you have the opportunity to rest. It's like you just can't hardly stand still. But I think I've been doing much better since I realized I needed to. And so another thing is we have just been so blessed. Our church family has brought over meals every single day since I came home. Dinner has been provided for us, and even lunch too, because so much is made for dinner that we have plenty to have for lunch the next day. So that has been wonderful. And then we've gotten to see everyone little by little as they come and bring a meal. We get to fellowship with them, and that has been such a blessing because we can't go to Bible study and service right after having the baby. So it's just been a joy to get to see everyone as they come over little by little. Oh, and then another wonderful thing that happened at the hospital right after giving birth. So I gave birth at 7, and you stay in the delivery room for about 2 hours after having the baby, and then they move you to the recovery room where you stay until you leave. So anyway, after having him, went to the recovery room at 9, and then by 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 hours after having Timothy, our friends came to visit us and brought donuts for us, and Cecily came with all the kids. So we had all 5 of our kids together, and her kids too, we love as our own. We had 12 people in that little room. But I tell you what, those hospital workers, they knew that we were loved. Because they kind of bombard you in the hospital with this vital, checking these vitals and pricking this foot and checking the sugars and all the things that they have to do, giving the medicine and stuff. So people were coming in and stuff, and they're like, oh, you guys have a big group here. And I do wish that the hospital rooms were a little bigger, and I do wish that they had something better set up for the person that is with you to have the baby. Typically it's going to be your husband, but if it's a parent or a sibling or a friend who's coaching you and being there for you and being your support, that's a really big job. And just was so thankful for Hector because he reminded me to breathe, and just, he prayed for me and had our family praying, and for me, you know, while I was in labor. And these baby sounds are the best. I think that it would have been better if there would have been something more than a recliner. That's what they had for Hector, was a recliner. When we had Bella, they had a cot for him. And so I think that when the survey comes in the mail, that's what I'm going to say. Anyway, that's probably my one teeny little complaint. But other than that, it was just such a joyous occasion. And so this time, to have our whole family plus friends who we love like family in the room, like right after he was born, it was like the next best thing to having him at home. So that was like just a wonderful experience, and I'll never forget it. So yeah, that is the birth story of our new little family member, Timothy Levi. It has been like a little mini staycation here this past today. He is 10 days old, and it has felt, yeah, like a little staycation to have our whole family together, which doesn't happen often. You know, Hector works and doesn't typically take a whole week at a time. If he takes a whole week, then normally we have to, you know, travel, go somewhere. So it's been really nice to just be home and relax and be together. Next week is going to be fun, I think, and interesting to kind of see what real life is going to be like, you know, just kind of getting back into our routine slowly, really kind of figuring it out, and starting school back up, and I'll start making some meals here and there. I have some quick things, like I got some chicken patties, I got some hot dogs, for some quick dinners, some easy things that maybe Bella can help put together. So that'll be next week. Well, thank you so much for stopping by and visiting with me for a bit. I will see you next time, and until then, take care.